I wish Mariko Tamaki and Dan Mora nothing but the best, but I just feel that you guys were the truth, man. I mean, the truth and nothing but the truth. Okay, but let's take this time to reflect. Okay, what are your favorite visual moments that you can share with us from your Detective Comics run?
Yeah, so let's see if I do this right. Yeah, so a lot of the stuff that I tried to pull, because I knew that we were going to try to show stuff, a lot of the stuff I tried to pull were pages. I always love the pages that sort of a single page tells a little bit of a story on its own. So I love stuff like this where, you can kind of take this page here at face value and it's just sort of an iconic moment of Batman running across a rooftop and jumping off. And then I love this sequence that Peter suggested where we're zooming in on this window until you see the reflection of him as he's about to crash through that window. And I thought that was such a cool, this particular issue, this was 1023 with the Joker cover that everybody likes to mention. And it just, in an otherwise packed storyline, this one had a lot of room to breathe. And there were pages like this where, we could just sort of open up a little bit in the fourth part of a 5-part storyline, and then the last issue was so dense that I thought this was a great way to do it. I loved, so on the first arc that I did, the Arkham Knight arc, I drew, I more or less drew the Batmobile that Dave Finch designed in the early Rebirth days when he was working on the other title with Tom King. And it was basically the animated series Batmobile, but the front end was different. It had sort of like the iconic bat face on the front. I drew that and I enjoyed that. And then going into the second arc, I was like, how long am I going to get to stay on Batman? Why not design something and leave it as part of the mythos? So I started sort of from the model of that animated series Batmobile, and I changed some things and changed the shape of the body and stuff like that a little bit. So I liked having a shot with the Batmobile, and then obviously like cool splashy images of Batman as long as I was on the book. Try to get as many of that kind of thing in as I could.
Ooh, that's awesome.
I picked a Joker page just because he was so much fun to draw, and it was cool that we got some complaints from people who were really enjoying the Two-Face story and were kind of annoyed that Joker was being inserted everywhere. But it really ended up working out well for us that we started looking for a way to make Joker part of it, because it kind of brought the ending of the whole story together. Again, Peter has sort of a more classic way of working on story where he had an ending for, he'll come up with an ending for an arc as he's sort of starting it out, but he doesn't have like an outline that's rigidly beat out for a story. So we had an endpoint to get to, but bringing in Joker really sort of built a lot of tension throughout the arc, I think, and the way that we used him didn't upset anything that we wanted to do anyway. And I was just thrilled to get to draw him. So I came up with a Joker page that I thought was cool. I like this old school TV that I had him watching the fight on. Well, funny enough, I had have a neighbor friend, he's got to be like 9 or 10. And he asked me the other day about drawing comics. And so I put together like an email for him with an example page, and I showed him like, the stages of how I do it. And so I work like 75% now on an iPad, and then I print it out and I tighten it up in physical pencil. So on the iPad, I could watch the playback of the page back, and I watched it. I think it was like 18 hours drawing it on the iPad. It was just, that one was probably, I think I had a little more trouble with that one, and I tweaked some stuff, but yeah, it's all over the place, but it's a lot of time.
I just love your take on this character.
Thank you. I pulled two Batcave pages because I love doing, I sort of did this on the fly, but then I stuck to it. I would do sort of like a similar panel structure every time we'd hit the Batcave. And it changes a little bit based on the needs of the scene or whatever, but I would always sort of do this panel structure where I'd start with a horizontal extreme close-up, and then I'd have an establishing shot, which was a nice, cool, showing the Batcave, showing what he's doing in the Batcave. Then I'd have, a taller panel over here, and and then oftentimes they'd have a horizontal open panel at the bottom. So I pulled both of those. Just if you look through all my issues, anytime you hit the Batcave, it's pretty much exactly the same structure. So I pulled those to show.
Ooh, that is a dope Two-Face. Wow.
Yeah, this one I pulled just because I struggled a lot. There was another. They kept calling for shots like this of Two-Face flipping his coin directly at the camera, and it's really hard to do, to have the kind of space to get it in. There was a cover that they asked me to do. Actually, the first cover, this was actually not the sketch that they asked for. They asked for one that was more like this double-page spread, with him flipping a coin at the camera and Batman like strapped to the coin, like sort of a 60s riff, sort of like a more campier composition. And it was on a weekend, and I worked with it all weekend, and I could not get it to work. And I finally just drew that cover that I wanted to draw, and just made my apologies on Monday. They weren't thrilled, but they liked the cover, and they sort of conceded, but they didn't like that I went against their wishes. But I told them, I was like, a cover has like a very specific dimension, and you can't get this in the, Two-Face is going to be really small in the bottom if I have to show Batman on a coin big enough to have in the foreground. It's the whole thing. So this double-page spread I showed because I was just gratified that I finally had a composition where I could make that work. This last one is the last one that I pulled. This one I love for the same reason that I was talking about originally. It's an 11-panel page, I think, and the whole panel is just a great silent Batman story. Just everything you think of about Batman or Detective Comics. This is him finding clues, scoping out a scene, taking evidence, just being, as Batman as Batman gets. And I think Andrew Hennessy inked that one beautifully. I love all these textures on the brick and in the background here and on the cowl. Love all that. So,
how's the relationship between the penciler and the inker? Like, is there much conversation going on in between pages? How does that work?
Yeah, he and I will text all the time, and we work together now since Guardians of the Galaxy, so over 10 years, I think. And we come from a lot of the same school of thought on art, and so whenever we're starting a project, I'll call him up or text him, and I'll be like, they offered me Green Lantern, and I see I'm seeing like Al Williamson Star Wars pages in my head. Like I want to do, a really vast cosmos like that with just gorgeous planets and nebulas in the background of every shot. And he'll go, I know exactly what you're talking about. I got it. And we really always just had sort of a real mind meld type of relationship with each other. It's been real comfortable since we found him. Before I got with Drew Hennessy, I would get bounced around a lot with different inkers, and it was really frustrating, not only because you wouldn't have a relationship with this person and you were always starting over with a creative partnership, but also the readership wouldn't ever get a consistent impression of my artwork. And I don't feel like I really started growing as an artist until I started working with him. I mean, I don't feel like, I look back at my stuff before that and it's real hit or miss. And I couldn't really improve by a good measure until I just had the trust in somebody of what they were going to do, that they wouldn't, balk at the detail that I was putting in. And Drew always never complains. Give me more. I know exactly how I'm going to do that. Don't worry about it. He's just been a great partner the whole time. So I feel like he's not online. He's not on social media. He lets his art speak for himself. And I feel like he doesn't get as much credit for being a great inker and artist because of it. So I try to sing his praises as much as I can.
Your work just pops with him. And I got introduced to your work during Detective Comics. And I was like, whoa, where is this guy, man? Like, and then when I met you last year at Comic-Con, I was like, man, like I'm super impressed with your work, and I was just hoping that they kept you on for a while because it's so entertaining. And I know what I liked about the Detective Comics run with Peter was that they would switch arcs with, you know, between you or Doug or, you know, someone else. And I think it was Kyle Holtz did a run or something like that.
Yeah, Holtz did a couple issues. Kenneth Roquefort.
Yep. And so I love that. And then when they threw the Lieber Mayhew variants on there, I was just done, you know. But thank you for sharing some pages, especially from this 1023 issue. It's one of my favorite issues that came out this year, and this is my favorite cover that I've seen from you thus far. This is my favorite cover by far. I know you posted on Instagram the socks, the actual Joker socks. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, that's hard.
About.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Those are
Yeah,
cool.
so my girlfriend made these for me. She had these custom made for me for my birthday, but you couldn't buy a sock, you know, a pair of socks. So she had to get 20 or something. So I was going to give a pair to everybody on the team, and then the extras I'm going to give away with the covers as I sell them, starting in like an hour.
Nice.
Yeah,
So, Brad, so you've had the privilege to work on some very popular titles. You just killed it on the Dark Multiverse. So could you share what you'll be working on next after Detective Comics?
I can't. Yeah, you mentioned Noriko Tamaki and Dan Mora are taking over Detective after Future State. My exclusive contract was coming up anyway. They offered me some stuff that sounded great, actually, but I just felt like Detective was such a dream gig in so many ways and was so satisfying. It just felt, you know, as I would get offers in my email, nothing felt like the right thing to follow it up with. You know, I wanted to make sure that that I was fulfilled in a different way if I wasn't going to be fulfilled in this way that was so special to me. So I decided not to renew the contract, and I'm going to do something different. And I can't talk about it yet until.
Well, I'd love you to come back to Guardians of the Galaxy. I have that full 29 issues or whatever it was. I have the whole run. So
I always say before this Detective run, Guardians was probably the most satisfied that I've been with a title, and it was a thing where you know, this was long before the movie. It was the book that they made the movie out of, and at the time we were always struggling to get people to read it, and we all believed in it so much, you know, me and Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning. So I came on with issue 8, and I stayed through the end to issue 25, and Wes Craig who co-created Deadly Class. He was doing arcs in between me, and I got to be friends with him, and so we would talk, and it just felt like we had this thing that we really knew was great, that we were always struggling to get Marvel to keep publishing, and we made it 25 issues, you know, not that many, but yeah, that was a great experience. And then Detective in a real similar way. So I just felt like I needed to do something different and take a hard left turn. You know, I'll talk about it when I can, but yeah, Pete and I we would have stayed on Detective for years. He's as big of a Batman fan as any of us. He got 40 plus issues, and he'd already had 40 plus issues of Batman and Robin, but he's still, right. You know, he'll be the first to say he could tell stories with Batman forever. And I think I did 12 and a half issues, a little over 12 and a half issues, which is, you know, it doesn't sound like a lot, but at this day and age in comics, it's not. It's kind of a lot. It's probably the most I've done on a title. I think I did 12 issues on Guardians of the Galaxy, 11 or 12. So, you know, I'm taking what I can get, and I'm walking away with a win. Most of the books after Future State, I think there's only a handful that I've seen that are going to keep the team anyway. So it wasn't like it was any sort of slap in the face to us. And we knew early this year that, you know, they were going to change directions towards the end of the year sometime. So we've been able to adjust, and even now I miss drawing Batman every day, and that was fun to sit down. And even when I'd have a sequence like at the beginning of 1023, that it's all Joker pages for a sequence, and then when you get back to a page with Batman, you're like, oh, I missed him. So I'll have that, and I'm sure I'll get commission and sketch requests for him, and I'll scratch that itch a little bit. And who knows, maybe in another 15 years I'll get another run. But
What character that you haven't worked on that you wish you could?
I mean, of mainstream characters, there's tons. I'd still love to do like a good, real Superman run. Superman's right up there for me. Definitely Spider-Man. I have almost every issue of Amazing Spider-Man. That was my favorite thing. I need issue 1 and 2, and I've got all the rest. And so, to me, with that being such a important book for me, even if I just did like a cover one day of Amazing Spider-Man, just something to be in that lineage. I don't know if I'll feel satisfied unless I can figure that out. A lot of Marvel characters are certainly bucket list things, but if the situation's not right, it's okay. And I'd like to create some stuff. Like I was saying, I feel like the industry is trending so much towards new ideas, which I think is great. So I'd like to create some stuff. So I feel kind of wide open. And so often in comics, you don't really get to decide how things are going to go, when something's going to end. It's nice. In this instance, we didn't decide that we wanted the run to end, but I'm leaving it real satisfied. So it's nice to walk away and not be like bummed out. Like when Aquaman ended, I couldn't read an Aquaman comic for a while because I wanted to stay on the book. I wanted to get to do more interiors, and it kind of like tainted the thing for me. And I haven't read any of the Guardians of the Galaxy stuff after we left. No offense to anybody that came on afterwards. I had my time on it and I didn't want to, but I do feel like I'm walking away from Batman still like really loving Batman, and I could easily go into my long boxes and pull out an issue and read them. So that's kind of a nice feeling.
Honestly, I got to give you major props. You are actively collecting comic books today. Makes us so happy. Honestly, it seems like something that not most people that enjoy the movies and the characters do anymore. So honestly, super props for that. And don't tell me. Sorry.
I was going to say I'm actually terrible about. I used to be such a Wednesday warrior, and I've slipped quite a bit in the past 10 years about like reading current stuff, and I do get a feeling of like evaluating it from a professional standpoint when I do, and it just doesn't feel as fun. But I've still managed to get a lot of like enjoyment and escapism pleasure out of reading like older stuff. And I'll buy like runs of books from like the 70s and 80s. Like I bought, I filled in all my holes in Batman and Detective early on in the book from like late 70s up through like the Hush era.
That's awesome.
I was reading
awesome.
I was reading them in order for a while, and I filled in all my X-Men and stuff. So I love doing stuff like that and reading like a huge run of a book. It's so much fun.
You're making me happy. But I actually want to ask you the quick question of what do you do when you're not working? And it sounds like you're collecting comic books.
Yeah, I do plenty of that. I do plenty of like just completely turning off my brain and watching like mindless TV or staring at the wall or taking the dog out or just putting on a mask and walking around with my girlfriend or something.
Right.
Anything not working on an iPad has given me a lot of trouble with my eyes, so I'll have to like really rest my eyes when I'm not having to sit there and stare at the screen, and so anything sort of mindless.
Speaking of mindless, if for new comic book fans that don't know anything, are there any recommendations where you would start as a fan?
Well, yeah, I feel like I'm not, because I read so many old ones, I'm sort of a biased person to ask.
It can be new or old, just in general.
Yeah, all my little nephews and stuff that ask me about comics or have interest in what I do, I buy them those epic collections that Marvel's putting out, because that's a good, thick chunk of books. There's nothing in there that could possibly be off-putting to any age group. They're sophisticated enough for a grown-up person to read, and they're bloodless enough for me to give to nieces or nephews. The colors are vibrant. I always steered away from those essential volumes because Some of the art just doesn't look great in color, but these essentials are kind of exactly what I wanted them to do. And they publish a lot of eras that they never touched on before, which is so cool. I mean, the whole like DeMatteis Zek Captain America era is in there, up to Kieran Dwyer's stuff, I think. Stuff like that they just never really reprinted. Martin Grunwald stuff, or you can get like huge chunks of Thor in Epic Collection versions. It's just, there's so much good stuff. And I just love, like I said, in the same vein that I sit there and buy runs of stuff, I just love that it has a big chunk with no holes in it to read. It's really cool.
Is there any other artist where you just look at their work and be like, whoa?
Yeah, so many, and I feel like that's been the nice thing about social media is that, we all live and work in different places, and you would meet people before at conventions maybe. The bigger convention, you're more limited in terms of like who you meet. I always like to go to those like mid-sized conventions, because the handful of artists that were invited, you'd become good friends with them over the course of a weekend. But now we all stay in touch on social media. We're all like constantly posting work and sharing, and I feel like it's been really like supportive. I feel like we all really sort of encourage each other. There are very few artists that I feel like are sort of jerks or standoffish or aren't encouraging. And when I announced the other day that we were leaving Detective, I got so many nice messages from people that, Dan Jurgens, like a hero of mine. Phil Jimenez has become a good friend, reached out to me, and Jimmy Palmiotti, and like these really great artists that I always admired, I've become friends with now, reach out and like say these nice things. And I feel like when I got into comics, I feel like I was always like struggling. I didn't know what I was doing, and at the time I thought I think I had a wrong impression and thought I would see these artists that I thought were doing better than I was, and I would be angry that I wasn't growing fast enough. And I feel like I hit a point where I realized no, that was you, and you were dissatisfied with yourself, and more is gained. You're putting out more positivity and you're getting more back when you encourage other art, and when you it sounds corny, but I just feel so much happier with work and with comics and with the business when I look at stuff and let myself enjoy it, and don't act like every opportunity was one that I was passed over for. And I think my art improved when I realized you see that art you like, tell that guy you like it. You're being a schmuck if you don't. If you're silent about it, you're not doing yourself any favor, and that person appreciates that. And I think there's just a great community between artists and creators these days, thanks to social media. So for all that, for all the negativity and gripes that we could all have about social media, there's stuff like that I think is really fantastic about it.
Is there anything that you would like your fans to know or to pick up? So, anything about you that you want people to know? Well, I don't know when you guys are going to post this, but I'm going to start selling art from all these arcs. So Detective 1003 through 1027, I'm going to start selling it in about an hour. So by the time you post this, it will have been for sale. Gobble it up.
Yeah, if there's anything left, it'll be on my Big Cartel page, and by that time you can search Brad Walker Big Cartel and it'll come up. And yeah, be on the lookout. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and keep a lookout for when I announce my next project, because I think I'm super excited about it. I think people who liked my detective stuff will enjoy it. I think people who liked my Guardians of the Galaxy will enjoy it. There's little bits of me from all my favorite gigs in this next thing, and so I'm hopeful that the really lovely reaction that I've had from Batman fans and while being on Batman, I'm hopeful that that'll carry over and people will check it out. So I wish I had a specific thing to direct people to today, but Or like a general, like, watch this space.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Right, exactly.
You gained the fans for life for us. Not
thank
only
you.
for your tremendous art, but giving us the opportunity to interview you. So I want to thank you again. So Chris, let's make some noise for Brad. Let's go. Well, that's all for our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe and hit the like button. Check out some of our other shows. We're the Stats Bros. I'm Mike, speaking for Chris. We're out. Peace!